Okay, we will continue our discussion at the 2018 ISU course for speed skating referees with Communication 2195, which deals with mass start and team races at ISU events, which is going to include championships, World Cups, and Junior World Cups. Section 2, Safety Measures and Initiatives for Promotion. 2.2, Safety Measures for Team Competitions, including mixed gender. For the 2018-19 season, skaters must wear helmets for team sprint. All other mass start safety equipment is recommended. Beginning with the 2019-20 seasons and forward, all mass start safety equipment will be required for team pursuit and team sprint. And that includes cut-resistant suit or underwear, knee and shin guards made of plastic or cut-resistant material, cut-resistant gloves, cut-resistant neck protection, cut-resistant ankle protection, a helmet that meets the technical specifications for short track under Rule 291, Paragraph 1A, and the fronts and backs of the skate blades must be rounded off with a 1 centimeter radius. Uh, 2.3, control of safety measures. Safety measures will be controlled at a check-in point before the race. This will be located at the transponder distribution area or as described at the team leaders meeting. Skaters are responsible for wearing all safety equipment when appearing at the start and during the whole race. Hanyo, you have a question.
Last week we had our first mass start and all the participants were wearing a helmet when they entered the ice, and during the race from one of the participants the band was opened. And we yelled to him to close the band, but it was not the clip was opened, he had to retie it again. So what can we do with such a case? In my opinion, there's no rule that he has to close the band.
You need to refer to the section of the rule that says that the safety equipment must be worn as prescribed or as intended during the whole race. So I think it's intended that the helmet be on and it's clipped underneath the chin so it can't fall off.
So that's the interpretation of the referee?
Yes, in my opinion.
Okay. But can we now talk about it and make an appointment how to handle in such a case?
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. We have a couple other questions. I think Melanie and then Susan.
Yeah, for me it's also the question. I mean, it's written that the skater has to wear all those things during the whole race, but the last seasons we have seen that especially the ankle protection is a big problem. A lot of skater, I will not say they lose it, but it went down. And
right.
So you see a lot of skin, and we always have discussions, is it a DQ or not? And yeah, what we will do with that.
Okay, and I know some referees have disqualified skaters when the ankle protection slides down and skin becomes exposed, and some haven't. I've been one of the referees who have disqualified skaters for that. Do we have an opinion from the technical committee of what happens with Hanyo's case with the helmet becoming unbuckled underneath the chin, and with ankle protection that slides down and leaves skin exposed?
Actually, I forget to introduce our sports director, Hugo Henhoff. Hugo, maybe you can help us. How do you deal such a cases in short track when shin and ankle protector is not low enough and skin is open? Yeah, because some of the shin guard protection are without how to say loop.
Is the ankle protection,
ankle, sorry,
not
ankle,
shin
yeah,
protection?
sorry, ankle protection, yes.
Well, actually, in short track, the racing suit is a complete cut-resistant either underwear or included in the racing suit. So sometimes, most of the times, the shin protection and knee protection is already part of the racing suit itself. Ankle protections are not always used in short track. So some athletes are using them, some other athletes are not using them, so the ankles are not 100% protected. We should also not forget that the boots in short track are a little bit higher. So this is already protecting the ankles in some way. So this is actually not, ankle protection is actually not clearly clarified in short track at all.
Yeah, sorry. So for us, for future, we have to consider what to do with ankle protection. Yeah,
Yes.
maybe we need ankle protection with a loop, which will pull it down and to keep it closed ankle by itself. And concerning a helmet, if helmets open, the stripe of the helmet opens during the races.
The helmet shall not be open. It has to be fixed. Otherwise, the helmet makes no sense. Because if you fall, the first thing is that the helmet will move and it will fall off. So it absolutely has to be closed. It doesn't matter if it's very tight or not. You should not control that, but it has to be closed. So no open.
So we follow
open things.
Exactly the same procedure. Yeah.
Okay, so I think that answers your question, Hanyo. If the helmet strap becomes undone, whether it breaks or just is open, that's a reason for disqualification because it's not being worn as intended. We still have the question of the ankle protection.
If I just may add another thing, I mean there's also neck protections. Those are basically movable. You can take them on and off, so they have to be properly fixed. Since in the future there's the tendency to use the same racing suits as for short track, in short track racing suits, the cut-resistant neck protection is most of the times integrated already in the collar of the racing suit. And then you may have to make sure that the zipper is properly closed.
Yes.
Because if it's part of the racing suit and the zipper is half open, it doesn't help. So in that case, it has to be closed properly. It's depending on the manufacturer. There's no clear specifications, but it's pretty high. It's not stiff. You can still move your head easily, but just make sure that the zipper is closed until the far end, so that there's no open space. Otherwise, the neck protection, cut-resistant neck protection doesn't work.
Yeah, and I think where Travis's question is coming from with the height of it is we've had some discussion previously that on the men that the neck protection cover the Adam's apple. You know, of course, we can't do that with the women, but you know that means that it has to be fairly high. But you're saying there's no standard for that, just as long as if the neck protection is built into the racing suit, that it's closed up all the way to the top.
Dan, I think the argument with the clipped or closed helmet is also valid for the ankle protection, because unclosed helmet will not protect your head, and ankle protection that's not protecting the skin is not.
Well, yes, thank you for stating that very clearly, because that's been my opinion all the way along, you know, since we first started Mass Start, and the ankle protection was required. But you know, again, we have some referees that enforce it and some referees that don't. But I think you've stated it very clearly that yeah, it follows that we need to follow the same rationale as with the helmet. So if the skin becomes exposed during the race, it's a reason for disqualification. Susan.
Another question on the helmet. It says they have to wear it till the end of the race, but we've had skaters that are taking their helmet off because they've been lapped or whatever, and I thought our understanding was they have to keep it on while they're on the ice.
Exactly.
So while the race is still going, they can't cross the finish line and take it off, because there might still be some, because there are skaters that are doing that.
Yes.
So can I get clarification on that
so
one?
I guess then, as part of your question there, we need to define when the race is finished. Is that different for different places. The first place skater crosses the line, or the first skater across the finish line. Is their race over, and are they allowed to take off their helmet or take off their gloves, or do they need to wait until the whole race is finished? I think that's the larger question.
Yeah.
And do you have any further comments on that?
I believe you need to wait till the last person is finished with the race, because the accidents still can happen. And so by them taking their helmet off, especially when they're supposedly in the coach's box and they don't have their helmet, it's still dangerous over there.
Okay, do we have agreement from the technical committee on that? Okay, then I think that is something that's important enough to mention at team leaders meetings. So the coaches, or the team leaders, coaches, and skaters are aware of that, and they aren't surprised with it at the first World Cup when somebody gets disqualified for doing something that they have innocently done previously, and it has been allowed. Barry.
I was thinking, if we see a skater with the helmet loose or wearing their protection not as intended, do we get them out of the race? Or just disqualify after the race?
That's another good question. Does anybody have an opinion on that? Otherwise?
In my opinion, when you say it's about safety, then you have to remove him from the race, because when you let him leave him skating, it's still not safe. So you have to remove him from the race, in my opinion.
Okay. Let's hear from Melanie.
In theory, I agree with Hanyu, but we all know how difficult it is to remove skater from the race. So especially if we have overlapped skaters, we have nearly no chance to say, come on, you are out. So and now we have to handle the same way with skater without the correct safety measurements. So I think in theory it's good, but practically I have no idea how we can handle that.
Well, yeah, and I tend to agree actually with both of you. Yes, we should get them out of the race, but how do we do it? You know, especially if they're right in the middle of the pack, and you know, how do you communicate that to them, and whether or not they're going to listen? You know, unless you have like the dog training collar on, where you can give them a zap of electricity to to give them the signal. There's the logistics of doing it are difficult at this point.
I just wanted to add that when we are trying hard to fill in the safety regulations, that we don't have to forget about the safety on the ice, because if we have to remove one skater from the pack, probably it will be more unsafe than let them skate. That's very complicated. It's not only that we cannot sort them out, but we also can create some worse situation, because we are so much concentrated on remove one skater or two, or I don't know. So it's very complicated to stop them from skating.
Yeah, excellent point.
An opportunity can be that we have direct contact to the loudspeaker, so they can announce that the skater has to leave the pack. And then the trainers, or even if the skater can hear it, that then it's announced, so they have to know it.
Yeah, I guess that is one possible solution, but again, it's going to be difficult to make that be effective. So I think the answer to that is that we disqualify the skater, and we just leave them in the race. We inform them afterwards that they're disqualified because. Oh, and we have one more comment.
Now, may I can just give you a suggestion on that? I understand the issues you're having with getting the athlete out. That's fully understandable. It's not easy. But I think if you properly communicate it to the team leaders and clearly make them understand that an athlete is getting disqualification based on that, and as soon as this will happen the first time, There might be some complaints for those who did not understand. They might tell it's unfair, but then they will understand it. That's just a human reaction, a normal human reaction. Once you get it once, then everybody will comply. So I don't want to tell you, okay, let's make this happen. Let's hope that somebody will get a disqualification or that everybody will comply afterwards. But I really think that if you properly communicate it to the team leaders, and if it's really happening, there will be no second time. So it will be just everybody will comply. That's my opinion. And maybe it helps also to solve somehow this issue.
Right, and in the past we have, or at least I have, run through the mass start safety equipment rules at the team leaders meeting. So that is communicated, but you still end up with skaters who have equipment that doesn't quite fit properly, ankle protection moves, and that's where we have most of our equipment infractions. So they know about it, they get disqualified. You're right, the more skaters that get disqualified, the more they learn that, well, gee, I can't do this anymore, I need to find better fitting equipment. So, it may take some more time yet. Mario.
I had a question in regards to the disqualification announcement, knowing that in mass start there's no coaches box and no coaches and they're all around. What's your suggestion on making this announced through the speaker from the announcer?
Any opinions on that? Hanyo's got an opinion.
When we do mass start, there's always a speaker next to us as a referee. The speaker is not more than 1 meter away from us, and when we have a disqualification or someone is lapped and has to leave the race, we communicate through the speaker.
Okay, so that's something that the referee is going to make that decision and is going to communicate to the announcer, and the announcer is going to make an announcement immediately that the skater's disqualified or has to leave the race because they've been lapped. Any other discussion or questions on that point? Okay, let's move ahead. We're Section 2, Safety Measures and Initiatives for Promotion still. 2.4, New Racing Suit Design Requirements. The guidelines for short track racing suits have been adopted in order to clearly identify and recognize skaters and national teams and to create a spectator-friendly presentation. The design already approved for short track racing suits may be used. Countries may use racing suits with one design for mass start and team events and a different design for individual distances. For the 2018-19 season, the new designs are recommended. They must be submitted to the ISU for approval before use in ISU events. For the 2019-20 season and forward, the new designs are mandatory for ISU events. They must be submitted to the ISU for approval by July 31, 2019. Future changes must be submitted by July 31 preceding the season. Still with the new racing suit design requirements, these are the guidelines. Racing suits shall have a design that clearly distinguishes the country. The front and back of the upper body shall clearly show the national flag. For countries that have similar flags, they will use unique artwork showing the flag on the upper body and use the national colors on the rest of the suits. This applies to racing suits only, not national team uniforms, such as warm-ups and whatever else. All ISU requirements and restrictions for advertising marks apply, and the country name may be shown on the back. And here are some design examples for racing suits that are currently used for short track speed skating. So you can see the designs that we're looking for. The one from Germany, of course, you have colors that are similar to other flags, and that's the design they came up with. these suits can be used for our speed skating events. The countries don't have to reinvent the wheel and come up with a new design. These are perfectly acceptable. Section 3, distances and tracks for mass start. 3.3, track organization diagram. You got something a little new and a little different. Now all the equipment check and transponder and helmet covers has been moved over here. Entry to the ice occurs on the crossing straight, and the skaters come around to the gathering space. I like this diagram because it shows where everything takes place, where the cones are placed, where the finish cameras are going to be, where the starter is going to stand, where the lap board is, the lap counter board is going to be. So we have a standardized infield setup and entrance to the ice. Now, is this going to work at every oval? Well, no, because it depends upon what the how big the competition is, whether or not the infield is completely clear, which doesn't necessarily happen at every competition. And it depends where the stairs are. So this is kind of our guideline here. So race procedures for mass start. 4.1, equipment. Transponders must be worn, and helmet cover numbers must correspond to the start list.
So then, at the last competition last week, there was a problem with the transponders. The guys behind the table did a good job. They prepared themselves very well. They put the transponders in the helmet cover, and then the skaters came and became the helmet cover with the transponders. And during the race, we saw that the helmet cover was good, the number, but the transponders were from other skaters.
Okay.
And the two skaters who were wearing the wrong transponders, they said afterwards, yeah, we got it from the guys behind the table. And Rule 279 says that you have to wear transponders. But what to do in such a case? Melanie.
Melanie has got a comment.
In my opinion, the rule says only that the skater has to wear transponders. He's not responsible for that he is wearing the correct or the right transponders, especially when the guy or the girl who's responsible for transponders make a mistake. So the skater can't see if he has the right transponders.
Yes, that's a very good point. I agree with that. I think we need to treat transponders a little bit differently than we do armbands, because it's very easy for a skater to look at the start list and know whether they're wearing a white or a red armband or a yellow or a blue armband. With transponders, they show up at the table. They tell the person there who they are, and the person at the table says, okay, here's your transponders, and the skater has really no way of checking whether or not the transponders are correct or anything. So they're just relying on the staff to give them the correct transponder.
Okay, I agree on that, so no DQ. And now the guys behind the table say, we did a good job. We did the right transponders in the helmet cover, and they changed it by purpose, the skaters. What does the Rule 279 say then?
Well, okay. That creates a very interesting dilemma. And
I just want to know about this rule. The skater is wearing a transponder. How far does it go?
What do you mean by how far does it go?
Is he responsible when he wears transponders by purpose with another identification?
And this creates something a little more complicated because you can't really disqualify somebody if they say, well, this is what was given to me, unless you have some hard conclusive evidence that transponders were deliberately switched amongst skaters.
Okay, but imagine that they were switched. Can you disqualify on that rule?
Still you will get the final times. names will be wrong, but times still will be correct. That's probably most important to know. It will take some more time for timekeeping, for referees to figure out who is who, but still times are correct.
The rule says that the competitor is responsible to wear the correct armband or other identifier when reporting at the start. So based on that, it has to be correct, but I think it's not a good way to charge the skater if the number of the transponder is not good, because I think he or she has to concentrate on the race, not on the number of the transponder, because it disturbs the concentration and maybe the result.
Another good point. Any other comments? So I think we maybe need to use the common sense rule a little bit on this. You know, this is one of these gray areas. Whoever thought refereeing was going to be easy, and I'd sit down and read the rules, and yeah, I can be a referee. You know, it's not that simple, and we need to look at the big picture and look at all the evidence that is you know, presented or that we have available to us. The other thing that you need to consider is that the primary timing system is still photo finish. So this is the backup timing system, and as Alex alluded to, we're still able to sort out the places and the times via photo finish. So if we get a mistake like this, you know, we get a response from the skaters or the team leaders that, well, you know, this is what was given to me, and you don't have any conclusive evidence that anything else happened behind the scenes to, you know, switch transponders or, you know, try and do anything to deceive us, then I think we need to give them the, you know, benefit of the doubt and go with the results off of photo finish and not make a disqualification. So again, but it's up to us to investigate. Okay, we can agree on that? All right. But let's talk about the helmet cover numbers for a minute, because it says helmet cover numbers must correspond to the start list. Now, does this mean that it needs to be the competitor number that they're assigned for the whole competition, or the start list number that is unique to the specific mass start race? Okay, so from what I'm hearing is that it's the start list number unique to the specific mass start race. So, okay, that makes sense to me. We just need to agree on it. Okay. We're still on Section 4, Race Procedures for Mass Start, 4.3, Starting Procedures. After entering the ice on the crossing straight, skaters gather at the 500-meter start area. My question to you is, what role, if any, will a referee play here? Do we need to have a referee there to organize them? Do we need to have a referee there to do a final equipment check? I see some people shaking their head yes. I see some people saying no. Richard Elliott.
I believe that we need a referee there to herd the cats from doing a warm-up down the crossing straight and coming back around to the 500-meter start.
Okay, so you want to have somebody on the crossing straight where they enter the ice to make sure they go directly over to the 500-meter start line, which is the gathering area, but that doesn't necessarily have to be a referee. That That could just be the meanest person at the oval that you can find to stand out there. Okay. What about at that gathering area? Do we need a referee there? Hanyo always has an opinion.
Yeah, my opinion is that you need a referee there because you can do the last check on the equipment. If the zipper is closed, it's very often that the zipper is not close and is not high enough, and you can check if they wear the gloves and so on and so on, and you can give them the last information if it's if you need to.
Yep, I agree with that. Does anybody have a different opinion? No, I think it also helps to get the skaters lined up a little bit too, so when they're called to the start line, they're already in the correct order. So, okay, we still need to have a referee there. After that happens, the skaters will be called to the line by the starter or announcer. For presentation purposes, the first 12 skaters will be individually presented. You know, that's by name. And then the announcer will call entire rows to the start. So the first 2 rows by name, then row 3, row 4, and so on. Section 4.4, races setup. There's no coaching allowed from the ice, and no officials, staff, or coaches are allowed on the infield before and during the race. So this is a little bit different because you've always had coaches in that in the center of the ice with the skaters until right before the race starts. So now it's saying that that's not allowed anymore, but we need to determine and decide when this period starts, because we have mass start races that occur, you know, after other distances. And when do we boot everybody out of the infield? Anybody have an opinion on that? Susan, way in the back.
There usually is an ice resurface or some break because we're checking equipment, so they all could leave when we're checking equipment. All the coaches, and they don't need to be allowed up there. There's usually a break before the mass starts.
Right, okay, so when that break starts is when everybody leaves the infield except for the skaters.
Correct, but I was wondering, do we sometimes let medical, team medical personnel stay in the center?
Not if they're team physicians or team medical staff, unless they have prior permission.
Okay, this is different than what we did at the Olympics then.
Okay, what did you do at the Olympics?
We let the team medical staff were in there.
Okay, and I guess I will rely on a ruling from the technical committee on that and what what we can allow, what we can't, because pretty much anyone can come up there and say that they're the doctor.
Yeah. My question is, we already have medical staff for the event there,
yes.
So I don't know why there needs to be.
Well, I don't either.
Team medical.
I have a question. When we are talking about the Olympic Games in Pyeongchang, we made an area for the coaches outside the paddings. So the question is that something that we have to do to make a place for them to be?
I don't think that that's mandatory, but I think that's a really good idea, because then they have some place where they can go and watch the race other than the up in the stands with the spectators. I think that's certainly allowable under what the rules say. It just says no coaching from the ice and nobody allowed on the infield. Does anybody disagree with that? It all makes sense? Okay, moving on. 5, mass start racing rules. 5.1, general. Fair play is the basic rule. No obstruction of other skaters. Skaters must take care to avoid causing dangerous situations. Skaters who are overtaken by one full lap by the leading skater must abandon the race and go to the coach's box, and technical equipment may be used for signaling the overtaking. I guess, does anybody have any, has seen any examples of this technical equipment? Is there anything in use in the Netherlands for this, or does the technical committee, or have they seen anything? Yes, no, or it just allows for it to happen?
No, there are several solutions. Probably we have to try some of them in cycling. They use red lights, blinking red lights if you are out of the race. So maybe we can do something here.
Yeah, just thinking that the other solution might be installing additional screen nearby the lap counter, for instance, and some organizers using it for lap counting as well. And putting numbers who has to abandon the race, because they will look at that area anyway, and if they see that their number is there, but of course they shall be quite well big enough and visible, but in any case if they see they're in the list, they need to leave the race, something like that.
Yeah, if you know your number. Yeah, was that your comment, Dina? Okay. Okay, so is what I'm hearing is that there is no specific piece of equipment in use now that we can make use of, or but we have the possibility to try some different things. Okay, that answers my question. 5.2 disqualifications. The first lap must be skated in one group without fast accelerations. This is a disqualification. I guess what is meant by fast accelerations? Is it okay to change position in the pack if it does not involve an acceleration? Yeah, I'll say, for example, the skater in the lead all of a sudden stands up and really slows down. Then a couple of skaters that are behind him just go around the outside or the inside of them. Is that allowed? What are some opinions out there? Or what does the technical committee say? Because I know in the past we've disqualified skaters for doing that very thing. Yeah.
The main wording here is in one group. Yeah, if you escape, I would say if you escape from the group, that means you are faster. You are way faster than the whole group. So you have to stay in one group.
So it's okay to have some changes of position as long as they're staying in one group and nobody's making a fast acceleration to do it. If it's just normal, you know, we're all skating together as a group going slow and it just happens by accident, that's something that we as referees need to take into account and call a gray area. Susan's got a question in the back or a comment. Daniel, wake up.
Time for a break now.
So that first lap is a bit confusing of what's written. So if you have helmet number 1 and you just obstruct, to me it's obstruction when they just stop and expect everyone to stay behind them. So it's okay for the others to go ahead of them if they're staying in a group.
That's not in the rule anymore.
Okay.
So if skater number 30 can be in the lead.
13 can be in the lead, just so they're in a group.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's just restate that. It's no longer required that the skater with helmet number 1 or helmet cover number 1 has to lead the first lap. It can be anyone. Okay, so we all agree that we're going to allow a little leeway on that one? Okay. Skaters who do not meet the safety requirements will not be allowed to start. We've already discussed that. Or will be disqualified of violating these requirements during the race. So we've covered that too, as well as what is meant by during the race. And as you know, Susan pointed out, you know, just when the first place skater crosses the finish line, doesn't mean that the race is over. I don't think we need to rehash that at all. Serious obstruction or other unsportsmanlike behavior against other skaters will lead to disqualification. And I don't want to get into that because you're going to be discussing that in the group work. Susan, do you have a comment unrelated to that?
Not exactly related to that, but related to if someone is not able to start because they didn't have the right equipment. Mm-hmm. If it's a limited number of people that can skate in the event, and you have substitutes or people that were the next in line at the Junior Worlds or something, can they be on the inside and be allowed to start?
That's a good question. And I see Alex
We had that issue at the Junior Worlds this year because there's a lot more that want to skate the event than were able to. And if you let X amount of the next in line be in the middle, because say two were not able to start.
Okay. Technically, it will be hardly possible, to change all the names in the protocols and the start list. So when your start list is signed, that's it. Yeah.
They could have different helmet number and everything else assigned already because they're on your list of reserves, is what you'd call them, not substitutes.
I think Hanyo's got a comment.
So I agree with Susan. When you want to bring a substitute, it should be good, but then you have to bring a substitute on a list with a cap number and a transponder number before. They have to be in the infield with the cap number and the transponder. Then there will be no problem, but don't change the cap numbers or the transponder numbers. You will get some trouble.
Yeah, and it's not just as simple as having some skaters available that can hop out there. There's also logistical issues with timing and at larger events television. So there are a lot of considerations here, and it's whether or not we can accomplish all of that and still not delay the start of the race and still be able to get good, valid results. Okay, so they're on the reserve list. Okay, Susan, we need to hear you.
They would be reserves and not substitutes. So just if someone from a certain country didn't pass the inspection, then so they weren't allowed to start, they wouldn't necessarily get someone from that same country. It would be the next person on the list that qualified.
Okay, and I guess when would this happen? Would this be?
It happened at the Junior Worlds.
No, but
that's
would this happen at that final equipment check at the gathering area, or before they even went on the ice?
It was before they went on the ice.
Okay.
When they're getting their helmet number and transponder number, they didn't pass the inspection. 2 skaters didn't.
Okay, I would think that would be easier to do
so it was
before they enter the ice.
Right. It's before they enter the ice.
You guys okay with that, or you need some time to confer and get back to us?
So solution can be very simple. That check of the equipment will be way earlier. That's what we've done in Helsinki. So that would start to prevent such situation. Start checkpoint half an hour before or 1 hour before, so then you know for sure that skaters are ready to race.
Which is kind of what happened, except there's a list of people that had qualified, and then 2 of them didn't. That we checked their equipment half hour before, and they didn't. They weren't able to start because of their equipment. So we went to the next reserves. And so, but it would be nice if reserve list was already made and we knew who they were, and timing and everyone had that available.
Do you have an answer now, or do you want to wait?
I mean, we can consider such a backup skaters, right? 2, 3, I don't know, and mention them during team leaders meeting and draw. let's say 1, 2, 3, they are reserved in case of any situations. Be ready.
Okay. Are we all clear on that? So it is possible to have a reserve list. We just need to make sure we communicate that clearly to the team leaders. Okay, section 7, distances and tracks for team races. 7.3, track organization diagram for team pursuit. Nothing is really changed here, but we've got this nice diagram that we can use to aid in setup, and also for organizers. We just make it's easy for us to make sure everything's in place. We have a similar diagram for team sprint. I especially like the placement of the cones on the inside and the outside of the track at the beginning and end of the exchange zones. And that's all I have for that communication. At this point, I would just like to continue with our last communication. Which is 2199. Which is Speedskating Championships 2019 qualification process and quota processes, quotas and entry procedures. Paragraph 1 is the calendar and distribution of distances and races. This lists all of the championships, where they're held, the dates, and the days and dates that each of the distances are raced. So I'm not going to go through it competition by competition, but you have it available. If you're assigned one of these competitions, you know exactly what is going to happen and when. Section 2, qualifying events. World Cups number 1 through 4 are qualifying events for all championships except World Junior Championships. 3, entry quotas and qualification processes. 3.1, European Championships. Maximum entry quota per country is 3 per gender per competition. Continuing with the European Championships, 3.1.1, the sprint combination. Total number of skaters is 16 ladies and 20 men. Countries qualify quota places based on total points of 1 best 500 meter and 1 best 1,000 meter from the same skater. It doesn't have to be from the same World Cup. Whatever their best time is from 1 through 4. The 500 could come from 1, the 1,000 could come from 4. 3.1.2, all-around combination. Total number of skaters, again, is 16 ladies and 20 men. The countries qualify quota places based on total points of 1 best 1,500 and 1 best 3,000 meters for the ladies, and 1 best 1,500 and 1 best 5,000 meter for the men from the same skater. 3.1.3, the reserve list is 6 quota places per competition according to the SQRL total points of the 2 distances for the competitions. Preference is given to a country or countries that have not been allocated a quota place. If the host country has its best ranked skater on the reserve list, they will be allocated 1 quota place, and this will replace the last qualified quota place. Three, entry quotas and qualification process. 3.2, World Single Distance Championships. Total number of skaters for the 500,000 and 1,500 meters is 24. For 3,000 ladies, 5,000 men is 20. For 5,000 ladies, 10,000 men is 12. Mass start is 24. In 8 teams for team pursuit and team sprint. Maximum number of quota places per country per distance is 3 for everything 500 through 5,000, or 3,000 ladies, 5,000 men. 2 for the 5,000 ladies and 10,000 men. 2 for mass start, and 1 team for each team competition, and 1 substitute per distance. 3.2.1, the reserve list is based on the SQRL. 6 places for individual races, including mass start. 3 places for each team competition. Preferences given to a country or countries that has not been allocated a quota place. If the host country has its best ranked skater on a reserve list, they will be allocated 1 quota place at the expense of the last qualified quota place. 3.3 World Sprint Championships. Maximum number of skaters is 28 ladies, 28 men. Maximum number of quota places per country is 3. 3.3 World Sprint Championships. These are the pre-allocated places based on last season's results. The remaining quota places will be allocated according to the SQRL and based on the total points that we alluded to earlier. For the European Championships, the reserve list is 6 quota places per gender, again with preference given to countries that have not yet been allocated a quota place. 3.4 World All-Around Championships. Maximum 24 ladies, 24 men. Maximum quota places per country, 3 per gender. These are the quota places that have already been allocated. 11 for the ladies, 11 for the men. The rest come from World Cups this season, 1 through 4. And again, the how those places are allocated are what we already discussed for the European Championships as well as the reserve list. 3.5 World Junior Championships. Maximum number of skaters per country per gender is 5. Only skaters who have been entered for all 4 single distances may be entered for the all-around competition. And the entry quotas per country, per distance, or competition are all put in a nice chart here, so it's real easy to figure out. Section 4, qualifying times. Qualifying times will be used for seating and grouping of the skaters. Pretty simple. 4.1, conditions for valid qualifying times. They must have been achieved before the last date for entry. They must have been achieved since July 1, 2017. Times achieved since July 1, 2018 will be used for seeding. And times achieved since July 1, 2017 will be used for seeding at the World Junior Championships. Acceptable competitions are national championships, ISU championships, World Cup or Junior World Cup, international competitions listed in communication 2177 and 2107. And automatic timekeeping must have been used. Uh, 4.2 required qualifying times. The times in the brackets are for Calgary, Salt Lake, and the high altitude track in China. Again, you can see what those are. And here's the qualifying times for the World Single Distance Championships. Note that for mass start and team competitions, any of the above distance qualifying times apply. Exceptionally, for maximum 1 skater per ISU member, the following qualifying times may apply. That's for mass start and for the team competitions, which is the 1,500 meter time at 2:10 for the ladies and 1:57.50 for the men. We have a similar situation for the junior championships with qualifying times. And to be entered in the all-around championships, a skater must have achieved the listed qualifying time for all of the single distances. Section 5, entries. The online entry system will be used for both preliminary and final entries. 5.2, final entries cannot exceed allocated quota places, including reserved places. Maximum 1 substitute per distance competition. All skaters, including substitutes, must have achieved the required qualifying times. 5.2.2, for the World Junior Championships, final entries must include the date of birth of all entered skaters. The referee or TC rep may request verification of the identity and date of birth of any entered skater as a condition to accept the entry. Maybe not something that you've all been aware of before. Section 6, other conditions. 6.1, national team uniforms. Countries are responsible for ensuring that entered skaters wear identical racing suits and team uniforms that have been approved by ISU. This includes trademarks and advertising. And as Alex alluded to earlier, this is the domain of the technical representative, but if we notice something, we should certainly report it. 6.2, citizenship residence requirements and clearance procedures. Skaters who do not have the nationality of the country that entered them or have represented another country in the past year must present an ISU clearance certificate. So this may not be something that we're all totally aware of at any one time, but the technical committee is usually on top of that. And that concludes my presentation for the championships, as well as all rule changes and changes in communications. So it's been kind of a long haul. We've had some very good discussion and some good questions. I think we've clarified a lot of things, and I'd like to thank you all.